NFC North, the Lions, as we know, did not live up to expectations last year. They lost Ben Johnson, they lost Aaron Glenn to head coaching jobs, and they finished the year at just 9-8, just missed the playoffs. So entering this season, Dan Campbell wants the team to get back their edgy mindset. This was a great soundbite.
Everybody wants talent. All want talent, but it's always nice to have a little bit of saltiness to you over the talent that lacks saltiness, because that's kind of what we were in 22. You know, that's a little bit of, and part of 23. We had talent, but we had some salty guys, man, and we were highly competitive, and we were willing to make it work, figure it out, and so just a little bit of that edge back.
Well, also a lot of his guys have gotten paid.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a part of it. Is that it's like we just said about Oklahoma City. When you win a championship, it's not that they don't care about the regular season, but they pick 5 or 6 nights, last night being one of them, as kind of a showcase to make sure the Lakers know they're not in our satellite, right? They're not in our sphere. And I think, you know, this team was young and hungry, and now Jahmyr Gibbs is still young and hungry, but, you know, a lot of these guys, you know, you get a few injuries, you make money, you have families. So part of being salty is youth and not winning, you know. So I know what he's saying, but I don't think, I think the big issue, Rachel, Ben Johnson is one of one.
Yeah.
And I think when Atlanta lost Kyle Shanahan, the team the next year wasn't the same. Sometimes you just have a great employee, they leave, you can't replace them. Yeah, and that was Ben.
This is going to be a prove-it year for Dan Campbell, right? Like, how much of this was him and how much of this was you? I think there's maybe some complacency after you do well. Like, the Lions players thought, oh, we got here, now we can just get here next year without as much effort. Saltiness is one thing. Also, I think they're going to have one of the easiest schedules in the NFL next season, so that'll help too, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not a lack of hunger. Oh my goodness. And it's not bitterness, and it's not about contracts. It's none of that. I don't know. This is so perfect because literally I just finished a video and I went on a full rant, and I'm not going to show it to you. You can watch it yourself. It's about the Chicago Bears. And my entire rant is actually so perfect because it's the complete opposite of what we're discussing with the Detroit Lions, and that's actually where the issue lies. Okay? That's actually where the problem ends up being, alright? Because first off, you have guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown who got his contract, and yet he's hurting his ankle, and yet he still wants to get back on the field. And he's out there competing even in a game that means nothing and all of that. Jared Goff got paid, and they're still out there, everyone's still out there trying to grind as hard as they can, etc., etc., etc. It's not about needing more bitterness, okay? Right? Like, I get it. You know, the bitterness and having that aggressive mindset. That's not what held the Lions back last season. If they just had a little more of that edge like they did in 2023, then they'd be a Super Bowl contender. No. That's not it. Their defense continues to be a real liability because of injuries, for whatever reasons. The offensive line hasn't been as strong as it was in the past. It's not just because of the edge, okay? Not just because of, oh, we need to have an edge. You didn't have an edge after getting crushed as the #1 seed at home in Detroit? Of course you did. Come on, stop. Or now that you're winning, you're comfortable, you're paid. That's not the case. I don't look at, let's just examine the most important defensive pieces on that team. Goff, Gibbs, Montgomery, well, I guess back then it was Montgomery. But Amon-Ra St. Brown, like, I'm not thinking, oh, they just look comfortable right now. That's not the case. That's not the case. Defense is a liability, offensive line isn't as dominant as it used to be, and they had no answers to their offensive problems. And they remain too reliant on converting 4th downs to be good, to win games. The 4th downs have to be extra. They have to be the icing on top. But too many games last year came down to this: if they converted the 4th downs, they won. If they didn't, they lost. You can't have that. You can't have that. Even a game where the final score didn't even reflect it, against the Kansas City Chiefs, and that really drove the point home for me because it was something I'd been saying about the Lions for a while, dating back maybe to 2024, I forget exactly, but definitely before the Chiefs game. It was just like, this is a perfect example because the score definitely looked, I think it was what? 31-17? Whatever it was, the score didn't make it feel close, but it was just kind of like if you really examine how the game unfolded, if you converted that fourth down and converted that other fourth down, everything shifts and you're in a great position to win that game. But you didn't, and now you lost convincingly. And the games can't be like that. They cannot be like that. And you can't keep saying, well, our defense isn't as good, so we have to be more aggressive on fourth down. And it's like, no, that sounds good in theory. That has clearly not worked in practice. And it doesn't even make mathematical sense either, because you're also putting more pressure on a defense that's already injured or not playing well, depending on which week and time we're discussing. So, I hate that idea as well. But it's just like, they had no business competing with the Los Angeles Rams in that one game, and yet they were again. That game got pretty crazy, and you were giving up fourth down conversions to the Rams, but I don't look at them and just say, oh, well, they don't have enough edge, or they're complacent, or they got paid, and now we don't see the same energy from them. That's nonsense. It's nonsense. And I talk about this constantly. You need solutions to the problem. Of course you need someone who can identify the problem, and then you need solutions to the problem. And that's why I said in my whole rant about the Chicago Bears, and I said, you should love this. You should love this because you have Ben Johnson coming out here saying, I have a 100-throw highlight reel that I'm going to show to Caleb Williams of the times when he needs to be more accurate. That's identifying a problem, and we're working toward a solution to fix that problem. It's not about Caleb just needing a little more bitterness or needing more of an edge. That's not it. That's not it. That's not the reality. And I know that because that's why Dan Campbell took over play calling. It wasn't just that they needed more edge or better execution. So, again, I love Dan Campbell's messaging, and I find it inspiring. I find it motivating. I've told you guys this a million times. I still have random clips saved and bookmarked on my phone from, especially Amon-Ra St. Brown screaming, I'm built for this. And listening to Dan Campbell, I do get fired up. And there were times, especially throughout the season, and you're hearing random sound bites, and I'm a human being, so sometimes I feel great, sometimes I feel low. And there are times when I hear something from Dan Campbell, the Detroit Lions, and I get fired up. I get motivated. So I'm the perfect audience for that message. I love receiving those kinds of things. But you need solutions to the problem. You need solutions to the problem, and so sometimes that gets overshadowed too much, and that frustrates me personally. That frustrates me. And then even when they kind of, rightfully so, identify, well, maybe it's not just bitterness. But then you start talking about money and complacency. That's not the Lions' fault. That's not the issue with the Lions. So that drives me even more crazy because this is what I always tell Kay about. You get further and further from reality. You get further and further from actually evaluating what the real situation is. It's like once you mess up 1 + 1 is equal to 2, now you're messing up 2 + 3, 7 + 4. You mess up everything. Once you mess up the top part of the equation, even though your math is correct, you still find yourself getting further and further away. You can do the math completely correctly, but you mess up one part of an equation, and you could say, x equals 75. And it's like, bro, x equals 2. But you say, look, I did all of this right. I did all the steps right. And you did, but you made this one mistake, and that derailed you massively. So you're not even close to the right answer. That's what happens. That's what happens, and it's very easy to do. So, again, I'm not saying that Dan Campbell needs to give all the right answers at whatever event where all the coaches were, and they're all getting interviewed, and I forget what it was. I don't even half pay attention to those types of events and those types of things because, like I said, it only matters so much when it's all said and done. But that is the stuff I'm constantly hearing about teams, like with Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions. And after a year like that, it's just the wrong conversation. It's the wrong conversation, and then it's the wrong interpretation of that conversation. So, yeah. It's like, I'm bitter. I've got the edge. I'm not paid. I didn't get paid. I won. The millions of dollars. I'll tell you, I won't lose that edge, man. Are you kidding me? I'll be back at it, and I'll be ready to go. But it's just like, And so that's why I went on that whole rant about the Chicago Bears, and I said, if you're a Chicago Bears fan, if you're a Caleb fan, you should love this. I said, you should sleep easy knowing that you have someone who is holding this team accountable, that they are going to do the work. That they are going to go after it. And that's what you want. That's what you need. Accountability, accountability, accountability. But it's not just accountability. It's accountability with solutions to the problem and problem identification. You need that. You need all of it. And so that's what I just want to see more from the Detroit Lions. I'm not saying they're not on that path. I'm not saying they're not doing that because they're trying, hiring new coaches and whatnot. I think that's all good, all fair game, but we are not going to talk about that like, oh, well, they're just kind of complacent or this or that or Nick, right? We'll try to come out and say, oh, I think it's never been able to bounce back from them losing in 2023. That's all nonsense. It's not money. It's not having the scars of 2023 or this. Not that they're not bitter and not any of that. I just wholeheartedly disagree with all of that nonsense. This team, give them the solutions, identify the problems, and they will compete. They will be great. They'll get it done. Stop having the defense become a complete liability. And you can say, well, it's injuries and this and that. Find a way through that. Figure that out. Put extra money. Get more depth. I don't know what to tell you. I'm not the GM, but whatever you're doing is wrong. Whatever you're doing right now isn't working. Figure out a new way. Change how you run practices. Change how you prepare your team in the offseason. Change strength and conditioning. I don't know what to tell you. You have to figure something out. You have to because when it keeps happening, it keeps happening, it keeps happening, you have to find something out. Spread out the money, less money concentrated in one area, get more depth. Get more Bs rather than a couple of As and then a drop-off to Cs and Ds. Again, I don't know the exact answer. It's not my job to figure out the solution. But you have to figure it out. You have to figure it out. So, those are the conversations. Those are the things that matter to me. Not the amount of bitterness in the Detroit Lions locker room. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Detroit Lions? And kind of what they need to get back to being that dominant, intimidating, scary, relentless team. Let me know your thoughts. I read every single comment. So, do you agree with me or disagree with me? Either way, let's get into some discussions. Let's get into some debates, but ultimately, let's UST have some fun. Please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all generally feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It really helps with visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.